maybe a few people will trickle in afterwards, that's fine, but won't be too disruptive. Anyway, I would like to welcome everybody here. My name's Rick Sterling with the Friends of the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center Club at Rossmore. And if those of you who haven't already signed up or are not already on the list, feel free to get on the email list. We're hosting events every month, one a month, and typically on the fourth Wednesday of the month. And we're covering a lot of interesting topics. And we're very glad that we're going to be talking today about China. And my partner, Lichagaste Limendi, and I went to China in October, the last half of October. And we were invited by Julie Tang, who was a friend who lives in San Francisco. Julie said she was putting together a group and asked if we'd be interested to join. And we said, sure, yeah, let's go. And it kind of went from there. The tour was organized with the help of China Educational Tours. They have a good website, very clear itineraries, and everything's pretty clear where you're going, how much it costs, and everything else. And so if you're considering going to China and you don't already have the contacts, I do recommend to research China Educational Tours. They were very good for us. Now this was a bit of a, wasn't a program that they do typically. They worked it up with Julie, and so it was a customized trip. And what the presentation today, I've got a slideshow that we're going to go through with a bunch of photos. We won't spend too long, but I hope the photos will give you a sense of what we saw. Of course, you know, I've got about 800 photographs, so it became a problem. There's too many. But there are 99 slides, and so we'll be showing them, and then afterwards, Alicia's going to give some of her observations, things she noted, and then I might say a few more words, and then we want to open it up for questions and answers. And I know at least two people here, Bob Howell and Dottie Howell, have been to, okay, just Bob. Is there anybody else in the audience who was on your tour, Bob? I can't see places. Okay, that's right. Okay. Well, in any case,
raise your hand if you went.
Right. Because Bob went on a tour to Xinjiang, organized by a Rossmore resident, Wayne. What's Wayne's last name?
Charlene and Wayne.
Wayne Tam.
Wayne Tam. Yes.
Charlene Liu.
Right. So I had fun talking with Bob about his experience before we went, and that was helpful. So the first slide here just gives you a sense of the street scene. When we spent 3 nights in Shanghai. We booked the reservations ourselves. We didn't use any guide, and I did it with trips.com, which is good for China. And the hotel was very inexpensive. I think it was like $75 for a huge bathroom, a nice street view, breakfast for 2 in the morning. And we didn't want to be in the downtown area. We wanted to be in more of a typical neighborhood of Shanghai, which of course is a huge city, 25 or thereabouts million people. But it was fun being in a regular neighborhood rather than a fancy hotel downtown. And just as you see that the smiling attendant on the right there, they were very helpful, and the street was very friendly and easy to get around. And this was the scene looking outside our hotel room window, and the first thing, or one of the first things I noticed is something that Bob had told me, that if you look down at the bottom there, you'll see the scooters, and they're on a separate roadway. And that is common in China. They have separate pathways for pedestrians, separate roadways for bicycles and scooters, and then the road for the cars. So it was quite fascinating to see people, mothers with their kids on their scooters going to work, going to school, going to daycare or whatever, from early in the morning and all day really. But it was really interesting to see the street scene. Another thing that we noticed right away is scooters everywhere. 20 years ago, China mandated they wouldn't have gas-driven scooters or motorcycles. They're all electric. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them all over the place. This was an area that was just a couple of blocks from our hotel. We were able to walk around to a shopping center, to a park, to a lot of different interesting things. And as I was indicating, there was a sizable park just a few blocks from the hotel, so we thought it'd be fun to go over there and wander around the park and see what it's like. And you know, it's a little bit like parks here. The grandparents are on duty looking after the grandkids. And a little bit of different here because there's a lot of Tai Chi, a lot of stretching and fitness, and some pretty impressive moves here. And I think they were showing off for us a little bit. Meanwhile, the people who were gambling on the side they didn't want us photographing them. I suspect, you know, they're maybe, you know, in the gray area of the laws, but I noticed that in a lot of the parks there were people who were obviously gambling a little bit and having a good time anyway. This, you can see the picture on the right here. She was really proud to show her nice moves. And there was a dance group. We're just wandering over here. You know, we don't know what is going on, but we came across this. So I think they probably do that on a regular basis so that people who like to participate in the dance go there at a set time of day and certain days of the week. Meanwhile, younger parents were over in this area with their toddlers having a good time. And here's Alicia making friends with a young mother and her baby. And the park was very nice. It was quite big, but it gave a sense of the society. Also near our place there was a big shopping mall that was as fancy as anything that we can see here in our neck of the woods. And one interesting thing is they had a stage area and they had live performances here. Now they were doing a video performance here, but a lot of times they have live performances and they have an audience and so on and so forth. So it's a mall. We were shopping. Alicia got backpacks for our grandkids, and they were very accommodating and helpful, and the price was right and good quality too, I think. Another distinctive thing about the mall is they had a children's area with all sorts of sophisticated toys and educational, and kids can work with Play-Doh and do all sorts of things. Sandbox inside the shopping mall. So the next day we went into downtown Shanghai to see the city and to go on the river. and look at the impressive skyline, some pretty interesting architecture. And it was very reasonable price going on the river cruise, just, you know, an hour and a half. I think it maybe cost us $3 or $4, quite inexpensive. By the way, we paid over there with Alipay, which if you're going, it's worth it to invest the time and get your account set up for Alipay, because a lot of places they don't take money. They're used to doing it with their cell phone, and you have Alipay on it. But once it gets set up, your credit card is in there, it's automatic. Then you kind of wonder why it isn't more common here. After the river cruise, we were trying to find the metro station, and we were wandering around a little bit lost. And it was interesting because we were on some of the back streets that have not been torn down and turned into high-rise buildings. But that was interesting because the back streets felt very, very safe. And people were helpful to us. We would try to ask them where the metro was, and you can also see how clean the street is as well. So after 3 days in Shanghai, we flew 2,500 miles to Urumqi, which is the capital of Xinjiang. It's sometimes spelled U-R-U-M, is it Q-I, but it's pronounced Urumqi. And impressive flight and over-impressive geography. So this is part of the Uyghur Autonomous Republic of Xinjiang. That's the formal name. It is an autonomous republic. I'm not sure how many there are within China, but I know it's not the only one. And one interesting thing there is that the parts of China that are undeveloped, the national government specifies that they should get more aid and assistance, and the more well-to-do provinces are obligated, and they volunteer to share some of their wealth and to boost the income and boost the infrastructure and the standing. And that's made a big difference because 25 years ago, Xinjiang was much less developed than it is today, and that's part of the reason is because the national government focuses on developing the areas that are less developed. Another interesting about Xinjiang is it borders 8 different countries. On the right you've got Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. And so it's really a hub, and it's in a large area. It's like 1/6 the size of the entire surface area of China, which is one of the largest countries in the world. And as we were flying into Urumqi, we had a chance to see lots of high-rise developments there as well. And I was also interested to see the low-rise developments. At the Urumqi airport, I noticed they have little admonitions at various places in the public. At the men's urinal, there's that saying, "A small step forward, a big stride for civilization." So, a little humor to stop the. Hey, come on, guys! Don't pee in the urinal. Don't leave it on the floor. So Xinjiang is central to the ancient Silk Road, and on this map, the Xinjiang or Kashgar is at the junction of the blue line and the red line, and to the right of that point, you've got the white area, which is a huge desert, and most of it it's not livable at all. But the Silk Road passed around the northern edge and then the southern edge, and You know, today the same passageways are being used for the Belt and Road Initiative, which China is developing with road transport and especially train transport to carry goods back and forth between Asia and Europe and then all over the world now. It's like a huge project that's underway, which is going to have big repercussions on trade in the world. In Xinjiang, as I was saying, they've got 4-star hotels there. It's not at all primitive or basic. There's got fancy hotels. When we were on our own, we stayed in a very economical one, and we also didn't want to be at a tourist place. But the China Educational Tours, maybe they feel most of their clientele, they need to have it more upscale. So those are the hotels we were staying in, but they were very fancy, and they were, I don't know, I'm sure the tour doesn't pay the full price, but they were like $200, $300, $400 a night. So if you want to pay that for the 4-star or 5-star, that's fine. But there's much more economical hotels. So this is inside the lobby, and that's granite on the floor. Very fancy. And looking out our hotel window, there's a mountain range that borders the city. And this is our guide, and he loved to dance. He was very good, very articulate, very informative. He loves to dance, and from him we learned that dancing is really part of the culture, the Uyghur culture. But it was good to have him with us. Oh, I mentioned one other thing is that I was pretty astounded because he could. I don't know how many languages he speaks, but his English was almost without an accent, and so I assumed he had lived in the U.S. or the West. And no. And apparently the people who speak the Uyghur language, because of the intonations and so forth, they are able to learn languages and speak languages unusually well and unusually easily. But he was really exceptional. The first day in Urumqi, we drove to a famous national park. It's called Heavenly Lake National Park. A little bit like Yosemite or some of the premier parks of the U.S. And this is the entrance. When we were there, it wasn't a busy time of year, so it wasn't crowded going in. But similar to how Yosemite is now, they don't let you drive up to the park, to the main areas. You have to you park in the area below and then take a bus. Everybody takes a bus, which preserves the actual park itself. And so here's a picture of the lake, which was really beautiful, and the neighboring mountains. And 3 of our companions, Olivia on the left, that's Julie Tang in the middle, and Satania on the right. And throughout our trip, we had a lot of great food, very inexpensive, lots of it, and we ate very well. Back in Urumqi, we went to a famous bazaar and mosque, and every day at 5 o'clock they put on a show with the Uyghur cultural dance, both for locals and for tourists. That night we went to a nightclub which had a show which was very good. Video combined with dancers and singers, and that was also highlighting the culture of the region. The next day we did a road trip to the desert, to the city of Turpan, which gets up to 130 degrees in the summer. And here you can see the statues of the camels with the person leading the way. There's a lot of emphasis on the Silk Road and how important Xinjiang was in the Silk Road and that heritage. And at the back you've got a painting that is very Uyghur. The culture, the clothes, and the shapes and the artistic design is very Uyghur, as is the patterns on the right, the red, turquoise, and orange and blue. That is a very Uyghur, that pattern, those patterns are very much in the Uyghur culture. And we went to the desert. We did ride on camels, and that's us, believe it or not. I thought it would be pretty difficult riding on a camel, but it wasn't bad actually. There were lots of mosques and ancient cities in the desert. Really, you know, these are very interesting tourist places to go to, and especially if you want to learn the history of the region. And a famous Buddhist monk here, nice statue of him. And there's a market, and there is the Uyghur dresses for women. Again, that's very distinctively Uyghur style. And hundreds of miles of desert, and that's not an exaggeration. We climbed up a sand dune that was like, imagine in the pictures of the Sahara Desert. And as far as you could see, it was sand dunes. So that's, you know, that is just on the edge of this area, which is uninhabitable. That's just a pure desert. Desert cliffs, and there we've visited several oases and villages in the desert. They grow a tremendous number of grapes and melons in this area. Very good, very tasty. And water flows underground. These oases and some of the cities like Turpan, they tap into underground rivers that flow from the mountains. And our guide was explaining this to us, and on the back behind him there's a painting which shows what's going on with the mountains, and then the snow accumulation, and then the snow melt, and then travels underground, and they have a way of tapping in to the underground river to keep it flowing and to tap into that river source, and that's been something they've done for a long time. Yeah, Karaz. It's the name for it is Karaz. But there was a tremendous display of this. We went to a museum, and they had the underground river. Or the stream, the steady flow of fresh water from the mountains under. We were walking on glass tiles from here to the door, and they had with lights, and you could just see the water flowing underneath. So a lot of very interesting, well done displays, and museums were part of the tour as well. And we were in the desert then, and then from there, over the next few days, we proceeded to the mountains. And here's where we got. Now, one interesting thing is the drive. So the trip involved several drives. We flew several times, not just from Shanghai to Urumqi, but we flew from Urumqi to Kashgar. And because even that trip was, you know, many hundreds of miles. And there's not a bullet train on that stretch. So we did a lot of road travel in addition to the air travel, and the drive we did up to the mountains was amazing. I've installed some wind turbines myself, so some small ones in Antarctica, as it turned out. But because of that work, I'm interested in wind turbines and clean energy and that sort of thing. And I've seen some impressive wind farms here. In fact, there's one out near Rio Vista, Bird's Landing, that's impressive, but I've never seen anything like this. This was just miles after miles after miles of wind turbines like this. Both sides of the highway had them. And here's an electric charging station for cars. And, the wind turbines are right in the background. So that area is really a wind tunnel, the canyon coming down out of the mountains. So they've really capitalized on it by erecting all these power generating wind turbines. This is just a shot. The scenery was spectacular, going up to the high altitudes. And there were checkpoints. Some people ask, are there checkpoints all over the place? No, there are checkpoints. There's a few checkpoints. This is close to some national borders, but we typically, our guide would have our paperwork and would go in and would clear it, and there was no problem. Here's the mountain valley, and it was the Silk Road in the past, and it's the Belt and Road Initiative today. Tajik hospitality, wherever we went, people were very friendly, and this is a Tajik man on the right, and he was glad to talk about their situation in Tashkurgan and invited us in for a nice buffet. Here's his family. And they traditionally, in the past, they were nomadic, and some still are, with sheep and other livestock, but they traditionally lived in yurts, but now some of them have yurts, but they have more modern housing, like you see on the right and the left here. But a lot of them keep up, I've noticed a lot of them keep up with the yurt as well. And here's the hotel in Tashkurgan, which is it really is a small town. It's not like Kashgar, which I thought was going to be a dusty little town, and it turned out to be 1.5 million people. But Tashkurgan really is small. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
At Tashkurgan, there's an archaeological site they call Stone City, which is many thousands of years old. There were a lot of archaeological sites, very impressive. And if you've been on those trips, it's like overwhelming, all this information, and you kind of want to come back and read up all about it, but we sometimes forget later on. And there were a lot of Chinese tourists wherever we went. There's a lot of domestic tourism. People told us that there used to be, 5 or 10 years ago, there were a lot of Americans and a lot of Western people in tourist destinations in China. Not so much anymore, very few actually. And but they have been replaced by domestic tourism. So these people were very friendly. They spoke some English. I asked where they're from. They're from Inner Mongolia, which is a province of China. So a lot of spectacular scenery. And this is back to Kashgar, and this is the old city in Kashgar. And I've got a little short video here of that I'll show you. And here's a common street scene in Kashgar. Again, you can see all the electric scooters, and they're on their separate roadway. Another feature about those separated roadways is they've always got greenery. They've either got bushes or a lot of times they've got trees dividing it. So I think China must have had a very conscious plan of planting trees wherever they could, and it's cut down substantially on the carbon emissions, and with the electric scooters and the planting of all the greenery, we did not see severe smog anywhere. I think Beijing and Shanghai were kind of infamous for having really bad smog in the past, and I don't think that's the case well, it certainly wasn't the case when we were there. Here's a mosque in Kashgar that's being refinished, and we saw lots of signs. I don't think the population is heavily religious, but there's definitely a religious component to it, and it seems like it's not only accepted, it's supported, and lots of signs of that. And this is in Kashgar, behind the fence there's a river. It's hard to see, or well, you can't see it. But I want to point out, on the backside there it's just like the London Eye, but it's in Kashgar. And this is a hospital. Construction, of course, it's very impressive construction. They've got all these tall buildings, all these apartment complexes, and they're obviously heavy duty. They've got very efficient construction. So looking out the hotel window, it was interesting to see this. From the street level, all you see is the siding, which has some nice colored panels on it, but of course it's a big excavated zone. And then on the close-up, we could see that all the construction forming going on, you had a lot of busy workers, and from pretty much from sun up to sundown. Open air entrance to an ancient mosque in Kashgar. And we went inside that. That was very interesting. A special event in Kashgar is the weekly animal trading event. Thousands of people come and they buy and sell farm animals. Cows, sheep, pigs, whatever. They are there, and you can actually just watch them bartering back and forth. So some of them are done as a group lot, and then there's individual cattle that are being sold. And it takes place on Sunday, and as I say, it was big, it was extremely crowded, and then there's a huge number of vegetable, fruit, and meat stands that go along with it. So it's kind of a big event. And one interesting thing here is with these photos, you can see the features on the two men in front here. They're classic Uyghur face. You can almost tell a person's Uyghur just by their appearance. Xinjiang is an agricultural state. It's largely, and as indicated by the heavy interest and the concern and the attitude toward livestock, it is the biggest cotton producer in China, and very high quality cotton as well. Unfortunately, the United States has sanctioned cotton from Xinjiang. It's not permitted to import it. and they've got some reason, I haven't looked up the details, I think I know what the general drift is of their drift, but the owner of this farm is Uyghur, and he said, "You think you're helping us by sanctioning Xinjiang cotton? You know, it's Uyghur farmers here." And it was interesting to see, they told us only a few percent of the cotton crops are done by manual labor nowadays. That they've got these cotton pickers that are very efficient, but they can't get right the perimeter. So the 2 or 3% at the perimeter need to be picked by hand, but otherwise it's all done by machine. And they have 2,500 pound bales of cotton. That on the left there, you can see that. We also visited an agricultural science laboratory. This was fascinating. It's just been developed, or just began work a few years ago. And their job is to scientifically study agricultural produce, livestock, to increase the quantity and the quality. This was the very young lab director. And this was we went inside the lab, and they had a lot of laboratory rooms and displays like this, that they're making some analysis, comparison, and demonstration. Even more interesting, across the street from that laboratory, there was a huge area of greenhouses that there are something like 1,100 of these greenhouses, and each one is about 100 yards long. So on the left, when you see the sloping clay, that's an entryway to a greenhouse, which goes back 100 yards. And they have, I think 1,100 was the count. So it was phenomenal. So this is producing tremendous amount of high quality vegetables and other food products. And so, you can see the light up there at the top that's pointing out the temperature, the humidity, and other measurements. And this is the control unit. So each greenhouse has a control unit like this. And here's Elicha. Elicha's a master gardener herself, and so she could really appreciate this, the quality and the quantity that they're producing here. And we had the privilege to go to a primary school as well. So this was primary school number 21, and it was because of Julie's contacts, her good contacts. She was a judge in San Francisco formerly, so she's got some good contacts in China, and so we got a little tour of the primary school, and it was fascinating. In the front, I don't know if you can see it, but they got a row of ping pong tables, and in the back basketball and volleyball and so forth. The kids were all in school at this time, and we were able to go into some of the classrooms and see the kids. The kids are wearing uniforms and looking very well behaved. I think this is more or less a normal primary school. I don't think it was a private school or exceptional, but the teacher definitely knew what she was doing. And this was especially interesting. There was a Uyghur. We could just pop our heads in. They invited us to look in on any of the classes we want to. So I looked in on this class. Well, it's a Uyghur writing class. So most of these students, Uyghur is their first language. And then they also learn Mandarin. But their first language is Uyghur. And just like people have to learn to write in English, even if they can speak English, they have to learn to write it. Well, they have to learn to write Uyghur. The script in the back, the Uyghur script is kind of Arabic. So that's why you can, see it, and that's why the students all need to learn that as well. And as well, we went to we looked into another room, and they were learning dancing, or they were just dancing for fun of it. And so this is another little video. Very distinctive Uyghur dance style. So I started trying to dance too and forgot the camera. Okay, there are, I didn't know this before going to China, but there are 56 officially recognized ethnic groups, the largest Han Chinese, 900 million, and the smallest group, wow, only 2,000 people. And Uyghurs they make up 45% of the population of Xinjiang, and the population, the Uyghur population is, I think, 26 or 28 million. But it's growing quite rapidly. And the 56 nationalities in China, we saw this several places actually. They like to do the analogy of the pomegranate, with the seeds in the pomegranate being contained in the shell of the pomegranate. People of all nationalities shall embrace tightly, just like a pomegranate seed, cherish national unity. Just a couple of little things. Beware of misinformation. So this was this was a report from the Voice of America. Just a few years ago, they were saying China's moving to ban use of Uyghur language. So that's not true. Another thing is that some people say, well, there's no extremist element. There actually is. Most of it's in Syria, and tens of thousands of Uyghurs were recruited for Al-Qaeda, and they were trained with Al-Qaeda, and they went to, they were part of the invasion of Syria from Turkey, and they were in Idlib province, and they were part of the team that advanced and overcame the Syrian government in December. So this story here, the Uyghur fighters in Syria vow to come for China next. This is from December, just 2 months ago. So I think they have very little support in Xinjiang, but you know, they're a factor. And in Syria now they're being given Syrian citizenship. So, you know, the summary, our experience, and this is the delegation with Julie Tang on the right. And we had a great time. It was informative, it was really interesting, and it was educational. And we had a great time. Everybody on the group got along very well. There were 5 Chinese Americans and 4 North Americans and a South American. But it was really good. So I think I'm going to pass it on to Alicia. I'll say a few of her observations, and then we'll take some questions and answers.
Well, we don't have a lot of time now, but I just wanted to say that for me, being in China was a very, very important experience. In my background, I'm Peruvian. And in Peru, a lot of people don't know, but we have a lot of other ethnic groups besides the South American natives of the Andes, the Incas, and the Chinese people came on their own, and they developed a wonderful cuisine mixed with the Peruvian cuisine. And during the 60s, when I was coming of age and being more political, I was very interested in the Maoist revolution in China, and I got that kind of romantic idea that with the time evaporated because things were not so nice. But I don't have the sense of hate against other countries, like people here, you are embedded in your mind that natural hate against Russia or China or this and that. So I am kind of neutral to that, and I was kind of neutral to all that information that during the Olympics in China, all you hear was the Uyghurs, like that. We have to think about only that, not about who's getting the medals or who's doing well or not well. Kind of bothers me a lot, and I like to actually go and see things on my own and make up my mind and not follow just the mainstream news. So going to China was part for me rediscovering my past in Peru, and also seeing with my own eyes. And before I went to China, I read a bunch of books. And one of the books that was interesting was Oracle Bones is the name of the book. And it's written by somebody that is not pro-China. And that's how propaganda is made. This guy went as a Peace Corps to China, and then he stayed as a news reporter with no credentials. And in his book he says that. He just bought the credentials and he reported from China whatever he thought he should report and sold it to the main media here, and all of it is very negative to China. He has nothing good to say about all the changes that happened in China that benefited millions and millions of people, but only the negatives. To me, that's very biased, and I don't want to believe on somebody that is one-sided. We were in Cuba about maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I had a chance to go and listen to the Chinese representative there, and he had a document actually in English, and in the document he stipulates the stages of development that China has programming. And they said at this stage we will eliminate poverty in this area. And the next stage is all the agricultural states, that you don't call them states, they all are going to be developed in a way that they are going to come up into modern society. And now that I went to Shanghai, it's everybody that went with us said, this is different. 10 years ago, it wasn't like this. So I remember that document. I still have that document that said the progress that they are planning is such that at a certain stage, some people are going to change their lives. And it is true, being in Xinjiang is much better than being in Auckland. Honest, there is no homeless on the streets, there's no poverty, people losing houses. So what I got, and Rick was making me think about this, my experience in China was very positive. I felt completely safe. I never felt surveillance around me or police presence with arms. The only police that we encountered there, we asked them for help, and he did not know exactly where the bar was, the underground, but he could not help us. But not threatening, always very positive. Not only feeling safe that I wasn't going to be robbed or attacked by anybody, but being in a clean areas. It's not, polluted or dirty, and also it was easy transportation was easy to manage. We couldn't, I was in France with my daughter and I had a hard time finding my way at the metro or whatever they call it. And in China was very clear in English, very clear. This line goes to this part. We were able from our hotel to go to the airport very easily at 2 hours ride on the BART. Visiting the school was important to me because I was a teacher for 26 years, and seeing kids in the classroom gives me an insight on the society. Kids were very focused in their education. The classes were not fancy at all. You've seen the pictures, but how many fancy classes do we have in different places here too? My daughter works in Richmond, and I know they are not fancy classes in Richmond, and the kids are not being taught, all of them, positively, maybe in Walnut Creek, but not in all places. So when we studied at the school that probably had maybe 400 students from the buildings that you see, that all of them were classrooms, You can see that was a very strong school with lots of kids. Now kids go to school from 8 until noon. They take a break, 2 hours break, and then come back, and they stay in the school until 6 o'clock. So it's a full day of learning that they have. And when they learn how to dance, to me that's a good thing too, besides learning English and learning math and other things. They had nice areas for reading, they had sport areas for the kids. So it seems to be quite positive for kids. And the other thing that was interesting to me as a master gardener, and I follow a little bit closely the translation, is the way they are growing food is not by using chemicals and poisoning the food that later on. You know, when you put chemicals on the plants, you poison the soil and destroy the microlife that has soil. By doing that, we destroy a lot of what we could, so we have to keep adding more and more pesticides and this and that to keep producing more and more. Well, that's not what's happening there. It's all controlled with the amount of irrigation that is needed, the amount of light, the temperature, and there's huge amounts of those hot houses, and you could drive for hours, and there are hot houses all the line. So there's a lot of good fresh food growing there to nourish the population that doesn't particularly benefit the huge agricultural businesses that we have here that control our production of fruits and vegetables. To me, that is super positive. Education, very positive. Food production, very positive. Safety on the streets, positive. So many good things that I see there that make me feel like this is the society that's going in the right direction for the people in China and for the people that could, in Africa, people in Bolivia that are benefiting from lots of support. People in Venezuela got all their technology for their elections free from China, and there is not something behind that makes them be in debt to, or that they have to support sanctions to this and sanctions to that, or support me from the invasion to Iraq or whatever. When they do things like that, that's my take in. So. Do you have questions? We're very happy to respond.
Jim, can you pass around the mic? Any questions? Yeah.
How much were the flights?
The question is, how much were the flights? How costly? I was surprised. I think it was $1,200 round trip. And we flew Korean airline, which I would recommend. We had a very good experience there. In fact, when our plane was delayed departing San Francisco, and it was delayed an hour and a half, so we were concerned. We were going via Seoul and then on to Shanghai. We were concerned that we would miss our connecting flight. Well, of course, we weren't the only ones on the plane that were taking that road, going to Shanghai, China from San Francisco. But they were there, they guided us through the big airport to the plane. And Alicia and I, it was kind of funny because they had our names on the placard. So they were looking for the passengers to take to expedite taking them to the connecting plane. But it was about $1,200, which boy, it's not bad. Yeah. We got a couple more here first, Tom, and then you.
Well, you mentioned about half of the population in Xinjiang are ethnic Uyghurs. So I assume that in a big primary school, there must be Uyghur kids as well as other kids, mostly, I presume, the Han Chinese. So I want to know how would they relate to each other in a primary school, I mean, with the kids. I mean, do they have any kind of, hesitation to show that they enjoy each other or they like each other's culture? Is there any kind of a friction?
Can
among
Can I
kids.
address that? Really, we were very surprised coming in from Shanghai to Xinjiang that everything changed. No Chinese food, not very few Han people there. So the groups, all ethnic groups probably are similar to the Uyghur groups that you could not see, in the street you could not see. You could very few Han people. So I don't know how that impacts the schooling and the universities and all of that. But as far as we could see, the Han people were, happily selling their things and living their lives, and these kids in the school.
Yeah, it's a good question. We didn't, and it'd be one to explore. It wouldn't surprise me if there were some tensions, but we certainly didn't see signs of it, and everybody seemed to be getting along fairly well, and yeah, and our guides were Uyghur, and they interacted with all the Han. We saw a lot of intermixing without evident signs of friction.
Yeah, Alicia, from the slides that you showed in the schools that you visited, I didn't notice any cell phones and I didn't notice any laptops. Did you ask about that?
No, we did not. We could not interrupt the classrooms, but we had the principal of the school with us. Yeah, kids don't have iPhones, phones, none of that technology. Neither they have it on the desktops. They have notepad and they have writing things. But you saw that there was smartboard in front, so it wasn't chalk and no. It was technology on the smartboard, and the teacher was projecting something. But that's about all that we saw in technology. Kids they did not have it with them. I think people have it in their houses. As you have seen in one of the sites in Kashgar, an older lady on her phone, and in China, people are amazingly dexterous with their phones. They just do this and they are finding the world at the labs.
Yeah, good question, but I suspect that they're not allowed in school. But it's pervasive because people, young and old, they don't have wallets, they have their cell phone. So, yeah. Let's see, I think Jim's going to pass around the microphone. There's a lady up here that wants to talk, got a question later on, Jim.
Yes, I am Chinese. I just want to let people know, you do know when you go to China, your trips is all arranged. They won't let you see the thing they don't want you to see, even though you try. But for example, I would think like the school you visited is probably one of the model schools. They try to present to foreigners, that's part of their propaganda. We have a lot of experience. My parents grew up with China and Communist Party, so we know how they operate. They lie. They present to the only the views they want you to see. The thing they don't want you to see, you can never see it. You just won't even be able to get close to. Like when I was in China, I was in Beijing, 2011. They have some kind of things in Xinjiang. One of the Uyghur is a shepherd or something. He was trying to attend his either sheep or cattle or something, and one of the communist top official, he was far relatives from Deng Xiaoping, so they get a position just because they are relatives of the high communist China officials. And then the car, the guy who was shepherding his animals didn't move fast enough away from the car, and then the driver just ran into it, killed him.
No.
So the Uyghur were very upset. They were having a riot at that time. And then the communists have to send into the military into the Xinjiang territory. So they sealed all the news. Nobody in China knew about it. We knew about it because we have American students. they can jump across the Facebook. They found out about it, and one of my roommates, her parents were high military officials in Xinjiang. They knew about it, but they could not contact outside world. So that's how this kind of, the country was operated. So I just want, you knew when this happens, you're being controlled, you're being shown around the things they want you to see. And another example is that when I was in Indiana, I was in law school. China sent, that was like 2012 presidential election. They sent a group of people, they are all high elites, Communist Party and officials and well-known popular writers, and just they have like the China influencers. They send a group of people coming to say, oh, we're going to China to see how they run the presidential election. So I was assigned to lead them around to see how they do the election. So they're looking around and everything, and of all the people, all the political party, the only party they request to talk to or to communicate was the American Socialist Party. I think the Communist Party is illegal here, but they have somebody from the Socialist Party talk to them. So you know their basic, they are still trying to destroy our democracy. They want to show, in China, the people I talk to, they don't know, oh, as long as you don't deal with politics, the Chinese party get the people fed, you just follow the rules, don't make any counter viewpoint, and you're fine. So
Okay.
they are losing their liberty.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think we need to hear other people questions too. Thank
So
you very much.
I just want to give my counterpoint so
Yeah.
people understand what's going on.
That's, yeah.
Thank
that's-
you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
yeah, well,
much.
thanks for coming. We didn't, actually in Shanghai, we weren't on the program, we wandered around all over, and in the Urumqi and Kashgar and the other places we were in Xinjiang, we were free to go. If we didn't want to go to the day's event or the day's tourist trip, we didn't have to. So we did get around. You may be right that the school was a model school. It looked a little bit too perfect, but I think it's not wildly off the chart. In fact, I suspect there's elements of that in the primary education throughout the city. But you may be right that that was a model school. After all, I think anybody would do that. You would want to put your best foot forward if you've got visitors. But we were not just controlled where we could go. We could wander all over in all the cities. And people were friendly, and the examples you gave from 2011 and back there, there was a lot of tension, and I'm sure there were individual examples of abuse by authorities, and the action, the case you mentioned of a car running down somebody, that seems totally, I wouldn't have any reason to doubt that. That could be plausible. The question is, was there any punishment meted out to the guilty party? Well, do you...
No, I think we should let other people, no, excuse me, we need to let other people talk to, yeah.
That's what I'm against.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
Right.
you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
okay, I think we've got another question here, please.
My question is, do you notice the intermarriage with Han and the Uyghurs?
Yes, yes, we did notice it. Is it common or not? I don't know how frequent it is, but there were individual cases where we met people who were Uyghurs and their partner was the other. Yeah.
How many Uyghurs? 28 million?
Yes. Yeah, and they're about 45% of Xinjiang.
Thank you.
There's about 40% Han and then other ethnic groups make up the other percent. I think this lady here.
I have two questions. One is about the greenhouse. What was the roof made of? Was it glass or plastic?
It was amazing from the back. I was wondering when we were driving and I saw these mounds of just soil. Then what was that? It's so unappealing. It's dirt. It's dirt.
Is it dirt?
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah,
how
yeah.
does the light come in?
Oh, they must have.
It was dirt on one side. It was like an arc, and then it was plastic
Plastic.
Or something like
something clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my second question is, why did you choose to go to
Xinjiang?
Yeah, instead of...
Because what we hear here is so negative, and we wanted to find out
I
is
see.
really
Okay.
that the case.
Okay. And you found that it was really...
Well, we did not find what we hear here.
Thank you.
I just wondered, do you speak any Chinese when you were there? Pardon? No. Yeah, actually, I'm planning a trip to Xinjiang in late April or May, and I'm just wondering what kind of advice would you give to someone? I do speak Chinese, and and just certain things that you would watch out for or be cautious about.
I think it'd probably be good to talk with Julie. She's been there several times over many years, and she would be happy to talk with you, I'm sure. She's a wonderful person. And that's pretty much it. Are you going to organize your own tour, or are you going to get some help from a tour guide?
Just probably individual. I'll contact it.
Yes.
Travel agency.
Yeah.
Right.
I know Julie well, so.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I had one more question, a quick
Yeah.
question. You said the food was not Chinese. How is it different? How was it?
Yeah, the food in Xinjiang is more, it's a little bit more Arab. Naan and kebabs and dishes like that. And really a lot of lamb and no pork. Because there's a Muslim tradition there. Yeah, Bertha?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, my husband and I did an individual trip to China probably about 15 years ago. And so we had similar experiences to you, and just we wandered around anywhere. I mean, we didn't go into schools, but we sat in cafes and had meals with Chinese people, We did our best to decide. But this is kind of, did you see any automatic weapons or did you find out what the gun control laws are like, do you think?
The police that tried to help us, he almost was like my son, a young person that wanted to be nice and this, but he did not have any arms, and he was one of the few ones we saw around, really. We did not have the feeling that we were being looked or checked by somebody or surveilled by anything. It was completely, stripping here and there.
So the policeman didn't carry guns or have all this flak vests on him? Oh, that was to be nice.
There's very little police presence. There was the one case that's an exception to that is outside the Urumqi, the big bazaar area, which is a central point in the city, can get a lot of people. And I don't know if they've had an incident in the past, but there was a small tank, a military type tank with a couple of military people on top, and they had weapons. And probably it was just to prevent anything, but if somebody was going to start up something, and there have been incidents, I gave the example from Syria, which goes back to 2013 and 2014, there were numerous terrorist actions in Xinjiang and even in Beijing. Not hundreds of them, but dozens of them. And so that's probably the root of it. I think that's it really in the past now. Yeah, yeah, Jim, we got one over here. Yeah.
Just a quick question. The schools, are the schools segregated?
The girls and boys?
I mean,
no.
The Uyghurs from the Hans?
Oh, no. No, absolutely not.
So they're both the Hans and the Uyghurs?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we got one at the back.
Okay. Were you with a tour group?
No, well, yes and no. It was a kind of a customized trip, but it was at the request of this woman this Chinese-American woman who lives in San Francisco. We mentioned Julie Tang.
Oh, okay.
But we did have a guide when we were out and about. We had two different ones. Both of them were Uyghur. The first one was a very nice guy. The guy who I mentioned was amazingly skilled linguistically and quite entertaining, but he was not a Communist Party supporter. He talked about how his dad had suffered, and the second one was also Uyghur, and it was Xi Jinping all the way. So, you know, there's differences.
I'll give it to you. I had one other question. You went to Shanghai. Doesn't Elon Musk have a Tesla factory somewhere near Shanghai, and isn't he planning another factory in China?
I don't know, but China is producing a lot of their own electrical vehicles, and in fact, the U.S. is so scared they're imposing extraordinary tariffs and taxes on them to drive the price up, so they can't beat the quality at a lower price. So I don't know about Musk and Tesla in Shanghai though.
I was just wondering how you got your guides. If there was a particular group you mentioned at the very beginning.
Yes, yeah.
What was the name of that?
Yeah, that was through China Educational Tours. And so you look them up online, and they've got walking tours, they've got train riding specialty tours, they've got Beijing tours, they've got all sorts. It's not a huge corporation, but they seem to do a very good job, and they can customize a little bit, but they have some package tours, so an individual can sign up and go on it whatever they like, in terms of how much walking is involved, you know, what level of accommodation you like. It looks like they've got a lot of different programs. Oh, yeah.
I just on the electric car, someone said, this is a year or two ago, China, well first, you know, it has electric cars that are really pretty much the best, even competitive, very competitive, if not better than Teslas or US cars that are actually selling all over the world, except here, because of tariffs, for about $9,500, which is, you know, our tariffs, and even if they were 20,000 or whatever, they're selling here, you know, if you have 100% tariff for 40,000, and so it's, and they also make 80% of all the solar panels that are made in the United States. So I just, you know, was wanting to comment on that they are really admirable, in my opinion, for trying to get, rid of the pollution and the pesticides and all of that. That's kind of amazing for 1.4 billion people. Thank you.
There's one over here, Jim.
Hi, thank you for sharing your experience. Very interesting. I was in China in 2010 in a wonderful place called the Linden Center. A woman from San Francisco and her husband, I think she was Chinese American, and I think her husband was from Wisconsin, and they went to China and they fell in love with this area in southwest China. It's near Dali and Liang. And they started this Linden Center, which is like a hotel, and I was there in a painting workshop for a week. Our teacher was from India, not China, but we had wonderful experience, and it was like living with a family. They had 2 young boys, and they had they're homeschooling them, but we had all our meals with the family at a big round table, everything with Lazy Susan, and the man would take us, he said, does anyone want to meet some people in town? And we'd take a walk downtown and see the person who was still there from the Chinese Revolution, the Cultural Revolution, and talk to them. And we had people from different nationalities, particularly the Han, would come and do music at night and different things. And it was very not touristy at all. But my only impression, when I didn't get out in Beijing, but I remember the pollution was so awful, I was so glad I didn't get out in Beijing. And I remember the number of people smoking that was constantly, I don't know if it's still that way, but the pollution was terrible from the smokers. But all in all, it was a very positive experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
We are the friends of
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, reminder, we're the friends of the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center, and you can, the Peace Center itself has got all sorts of independent, separate activities for the larger community for all of Contra Costa, and so please look that up or get some of the literature that's at the table, and if you want to become a member, that would be great as well. It's just, I think it's $50 a year, $55 a year, and to support that, which does a lot of great activities. Right now, the center is hosting an art and writing contest for middle and high school students, so they can submit art and writing on the subject of climate change and the need to reverse course. And so that's a good project, and there'll probably be a lot of good artwork submitted. So if you support that kind of thing, please think about supporting the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center. And maybe we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks very much for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.